Good morning. What an amazing day. When I got asked to do this, I couldn't say no, because I know I've been a critic of so many sermons in the past, and it's one of those things, if you're going to open your mouth, you better be willing to step up when you get the chance. So this is the best I can do. Anyway, I'd like to start with a quick prayer. You would. Lord, just thank you so much for the gift of life, for blessing us. Lord, last night it seemed so simple. I asked you to help me find my glasses, and this morning I walked right to them. It's just amazing how many times you help us and guide us. And you put me next to Jack this morning, and just listening to his voice sing is comforting and helps me just relax, and so I can get through this. Thank you. Amen. Anyway, so in Exodus 20, verse 4, there's a little verse. It's the second commandment. It says, "You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God." You probably guessed I'm going to talk a little bit about idols today. And I had another one in Leviticus 19, verse 4. Probably didn't give anybody enough time to get there, but I'll go ahead and read it. "Do not turn to idols or make gods of cast metal for yourself. I am the Lord." It's kind of interesting about idols. I looked up the definition of an idol. The definition of an idol is any person, object, or activity that you give higher priority to in your life than your relationship with God. And I'm going to mostly talk about physical objects. There's so many different aspects of idols. They are basically everywhere. And really, what makes an idol an idol? Who gives meaning to an object that makes it important? We have idols in this country just about everywhere. If you look at the definition or in the commandments, it talks about statues and bowls and monuments. And well, we have a squirrel statue in the park. There's an elk in downtown Portland. There's a salmon up in Pike Street Market. Or you could look towards entertainment, games, people, anything. Anything could be an idol. And really, what makes it an idol? People give it their importance. They take value, they take importance in a statue. Other religions, many people, an idol is one of their main items of worship. So, but in this country, we see them. They're all over. At least me, I don't acknowledge them. I don't. Most of the time, until a few years ago, I never thought twice about what an idol is, if it has meaning. And it's like 2 weeks ago, I was listening to the talk show, and they were actually talking about statues and monuments in the South that had made the news. And they were trying to come up with a name to call these statues and monuments. They wanted to rename them so that they had no meaning. Some of the statues, they have one party of people it has meaning to. The other party of people, it doesn't have meaning. Some want to tear it down, but these people wanted to rename them so they weren't actually called a statue or a historical marker or a monument. So there's all different ways of looking at statues. I know here, you walk through any garden center, and there's a little statue of Buddha. You go into a lot of the foreign restaurants, and you'll have a statue of an elephant or other items on the wall, ordained people. But you don't really think that you're walking into the presence of something that another party could worship. And Just alone in my favorite little Thai restaurant, I know on one wall they have a large picture that's a monument to the Twin Towers. It's quite a big poster. But then you look at the other wall, and they do have their Hindu statues over there. And you kind of wonder, should I even be here? Because I'm putting myself in the presence of something they could worship. And as far as in this country, I never really gave value to a worship item from another country. It's just odd. Anyway, so in town, I started looking at different things. And I know there's a mailbox stand on Ohio Street that's the shape of a gargoyle. My first time I saw it, I looked at that, and I was like, there's something wrong with those people. And the next time I passed by, I figured out I should pass by here more often and pray for the neighbors. And then I started realizing, I really don't know what that is. So I Googled it one day as I passed by. And I found out a gargoyle, number one reason of a gargoyle is to scare off evil. Number two is a downspout to divert rainwater. So I went home to Bonnie and I says, do you know the meaning of a gargoyle? And she goes, well, it's to scare off evil. And maybe I'm the last one to realize or even look at objects. I don't know. I was at work the following day and I shared this story with a coworker. And he tells me there's 4 gargoyles on the community church next to the lake on the bell tower. It wards off evil. There's all kinds of statues and meanings. And like I said, in this country, you really don't think about it. They're not advertised. They're advertised, but we don't really see them. Although I did get the chance a few years ago to go to Nepal and visit our daughter who was there for a while. And I never realized, but they have basically some kind of monument, statue, religious figure on about every street corner. And I never noticed, but as you'd walk by the different street corners in the day, somebody would actually worship at each place. They would throw their red powder on almost every one of them somebody prayed at during the day. And every night somebody would take care of that statue and throw a bucket of water on it, which just basically washed the powder onto the sidewalk and made a mess that you walked through all day. But the statues were everywhere. And I never seen it that amount of time people would worship a statue. In the morning, when I'd get up, I was on the 6th floor, and I could watch people on the lower apartment building, and this one person each day would go, at sunup, would go out, and they'd stand in front of their golden statue, and they had a round spinning bell, and they had a candle, and they'd spin the bell, light the candle, bow to the statue, spin the bell, blow out the candle, and just back and forth. It was just a crazy ritual, but this is what they do when they worship idols and stuff. So it was really eye-opening for me there to see, but I still didn't understand that there could be a lot of meaning in statues. I got to back up just a little bit. Anyway, one of the most common Christian statues is the cross, and that's why I brought a picture of the cross. The cross itself doesn't actually have meaning. This one is actually, I put up, my mother-in-law had the idea that we needed a statue or a cross on a stump I had behind the house. So every morning before I go to work, I'm able to look at this, but I thank God for the day, but yet this has meaning to me. It's comforting when you travel to know that there are crosses out there because it's just a good feeling. So, but the cross itself doesn't actually have power, but yet it's the value you put in it. So when you're over there in a foreign land and these people put value in their statues, it gives it real meaning. Anyway, so I was getting ready to leave Nepal, and it was time for the souvenirs. So I had to get a knife, a handmade, everything's handmade in Nepal anyway. So I bought me a handmade bush knife and T-shirts, and then next to the place where the souvenirs are, there's this copper bowl. You rub it with a stick, it hums, had some stick figures of animals on it. To me, it's just a dumb music bowl. The daughter, Stephanie, she looked at that and she goes, "You don't really want to get that." And I'm like, it's a bowl. And she goes, "No, that's a Hindu worship bowl." And I go, "It's a bowl. You rub it with the stick, it vibrates." I says, "There's animals on it, it's cute." She goes, "Yeah, but it's a worship bowl." And I still didn't get it, because in my mind, it's simple, it's not breakable, it's cheap, I can get it home. And anyway, so she lets me buy it. So I get this bowl home, and I'm unpacking, and I show Bonnie my knife. It's neat. And I show her the T-shirts, and then I pull out the bowl. First thing out of her mouth, "You bought an idol." I'm like, it's a bowl. Look, it vibrates. It hums. I still, to me, there was no connection between a Hindu worship item and a bowl. It's kind of like all the statues I see around town. It had no meaning. Well, I didn't wake up. So my bowl goes on the back of the refrigerator, out of sight. 2 weeks go by. It's on the back of the refrigerator. In the meantime, I'm reading this book, At the Foot of the Snows, by Mr. Waters. And incredible book, if anybody ever is interested. And it talks about the first Wycliffe Bible translators that ever went into Nepal. And he started in 1969 translating the New Testament, and he ended up in 85 with a completed New Testament. And he worked with a gentleman named Hosta Ram, and this one man, somehow they met, and he convinced Mr. Waters that he needed a Bible for their village, a New Testament. He was the only believer in the village. At one point it writes that he writes Mr. Waters, and he says, "I shared the gospel with a friend, but things aren't going well. He died 2 months ago." So it was a struggle for him to get any support out of the village. As years go by, there was many trying things on both sides, but as years go by, he did convert several other villagers, and he had not really a congregation, but there was a small group of followers. And it talks a lot in the book about witch doctors, spiritual things that I never see in this country, but I know from the daughter's videos they're very present over there in a Hindu country, which gives all the more meaning to their idols, or what you would call an idol from kind of the dark side. So it was interesting in reading this book, because the villagers, once they started being converted, were naturally beaten, thrown in jail, because it's against the law to be Christian. Even when I was there a few years ago, there's still no crosses being shown. You don't advertise churches. But I guess 30 years ago, these poor people, due to their belief, would go spend time in jail. And it was really interesting, because here these group of villagers that have no information other than a shared word from Mr. Ram, they would literally go down the mountain and meet the police before they came to get arrested. They would meet them and say they're doing God's duty by spending their time in jail. So many times I've heard in church that people say, you got to go hide in the hills. Well, here they were coming to be arrested, and these people with their faith would literally walk down the hill to go to jail. It was just very interesting that the faith that they had with what they had to work with is something. But what got me to realize this is I finished reading this book. It was almost midnight in like February, and I came to realize that I brought home a bowl from the enemy. It's on the fridge, and it had to go. So I woke Bonnie up because we had a fire down over the hill that night before, and I knew the coals were still there. And I tell her, I got to go burn this bowl. Almost midnight. And it was almost midnight. I had to get rid of this bowl. I was convicted by the book of what I had done, that there is meaning in items. I mean, people put enough meaning in items to start wars over. But I knew this bowl, which was handcrafted Hindu, it's a handcrafted music bowl designed to worship their God. And I brought it home, and it had to burn. So I take off out of the house, put my boots on. I'm your typical Walmart shopper. I got my pajamas on, my coat, my hat, my boots, and I head down over the hill to burn this bowl. And so I kindle the fire. I got a pile of sticks that's, 5 feet tall by the time I'm done. I'm working. This thing is going to go. And I walk all around the house and pray on all sides of the house because I brought evil home. And it was on its way of melting, but yet it was not good. I should not have brought it home. They called it very clearly what it is. Anyway, so I burnt it. Burn it. Sorry. And I will add that I was out there basically all night making sure this burnt. I think I went to bed at 5 in the morning. I got up at 6 in the morning and had a fantastic day the next day. Not sure why or how, but I was convicted to the point that it had to go. The next day when I got home from work, I went through the ashes and I found the little puddle of melted copper and made sure to take it to work and put it in the scrap pile so it would go somewhere else and burn once more. It was going to be gone. Which brings me back to the first question, kind of. What makes an idol an idol? How much importance are there in these items? There's a ton of importance. And that was the cue for the music. So I found this to write it up. Dennis Newark writes in No God But God, confronting our modern day idolatry. Idolatry extends beyond the worship of idols and images and false gods. Our modern idols are many and varied, even for those who do not bow physically before a statue. Idolatry is a matter of a heart, pride, self-centeredness, greed, gluttony, a love for possessions, and ultimately rebellion against God. Is it any wonder that God hates it? Anyway. Thanks.